Got it. Very, very cool. Or welcome, everybody. I am delighted. I am very, very, very honored to be the one to introduce our speaker today, Mark. So Mark Mcintyre is one of those trainers that inspires others, not only about what they do, but also about who they are. And we all keep coming back to this family because we often find here people who are larger than life that we wish to emulate in some way. And I wish to say that, Mark, you are one of those people for me. Yeah, buddy. So life threw Mark a lot of curveballs early in his life. And like all of us in this family, we asked ourselves, how can I win despite the odds? Yeah, so little by little, piece by piece, he built himself new habits, new beliefs, new standing, new commitments, new lines on the sand. And Mark is a self-made success story in life and in business. And the stuff Mark is going to carry us through today is what he uses in his business and what he teaches to others. 4-6 is critical to build the essential pillars to business success. So with no further ado, here he is. Please help me give a warm welcome to Mark Mcintyre.
Yay, Mark!
Let's shake it out a little bit and have some fun. All right. So we are going to have to stop. I'm going to start a screen share here, and I'm going to share the Force 6 of the 7 forces of business mastery. And this force is near and dear to my heart. I gotta say, it's what I've been doing for the last 12 years as the biggest portion of my business, running marketing campaigns for some of the largest organizations on earth. And the thing about this is, if you look at this as a concept, it becomes incredibly less value, just like all of Tony's principles. We have to look at these as processes and, even more important than that, practices. And so I'm gonna teach this as a concept today. I'm gonna go through the process just kind of like Tony does. But in the background, you should be looking at this as, how do I turn this in to a moment-to-moment, day-to-day practice that's gonna actually improve my business and help me to grow and get maybe some more of this in my business. So without further ado, let's talk about where this kind of fits in, Force 6 fits into the 7 forces. It's Optimax, it's optimizing your funnel, and that goes from leads all the way down into closed deals. And so I don't know if we've covered this in this mastermind, but we certainly covered in Business Mastery. It covers Jay Abraham's 10-10-10, and all that means is there's 3 ways to grow a business. 1, get more customers. 2, increase the transaction value. And 3, increase the frequency of purchase. So that's part of what we're doing. And then Optimax Sales Funnel, we're going to look at that today. And then Keys to the Vault. Personally, the Keys to the Vault part of it, I've missed on multiple businesses. And that is that if you don't get the Keys to the Vault done properly correct first, to where you know that by selling, you're actually making a profit, then you can sell absolutely out of your mind and end up going upside down more and more and more. So let me show you how this fits into our kind of funnel. This is us, we're leads, customers, and then this cost efficiency, operating profit, and capture, and how much it's costing, that has to be done first. So I'm gonna assume, before you really start to practice this, that you know that when a customer comes online and you actually sign them up, that it's gonna be profitable for you and that it's gonna be worth it. You're gonna actually make money off that process, and it's pretty simple. You're gonna optimize with the Keith Cunningham process first for your sales, okay? So that's Keys to the Vault. 10-10-10 is up here. And then we've got Optimax, which is us. And then we also have Joe Wheaton's content from a few weeks ago, which is sales process optimization. I highly encourage you guys watch that also. So let's go right into it. In order to change anything and turn it in from a concept to a practice, and that's what we do here, right? We're modelers, but we're not just modelers of ideas, we're modelers of practice. And the practice and execution is what's going to deliver for us. And so inside that execution, in order for us to do anything or for anybody for our team to do anything, they've got to first believe. They've got to believe it's possible, that by their activity, that they can create the result they want. And if they don't believe, it never gets started. And that goes for you also, because if you don't believe, you can't do anything, right? That first step has to have a belief or a faith at least behind it. So belief is our first step. The second is a commitment. And that commitment is I will, I must. And normally you're going to get a commitment if you have a team or yourself, or this team, we're going to commit to each other, right? That's why we have masterminds, to commit to each other and hold ourselves accountable. And then lastly, it's got to be worth it. And so that's where Keys to the Vault content comes in. And really everything else in our goals, we have to have a strong enough why to where now we believe, we've committed, and we also believe that it's worth it. And once we get that under control, we can start to make the small incremental changes that turn into something freaking magical. And the sales funnel is one of those places that little increments over a period of time, over different spaces in the funnel, turn your business into literally a pot of gold. So let's go into that right now. We're going to go into what the sales funnel looks like, and then lastly, we'll talk about the actual example that Tony does on stage. So part of the process of this and the purpose of this video is to actually give us the tools to serve our participants during the event. Making sense? Give me a thumbs up if we're making sense. Sweet. Okay. So here is a typical sales funnel. Leads on top, closes on the bottom. Just take a mental snapshot of that because I'm going to go through each part of this funnel. The top part of the funnel is increasing leads. There is a million ways to increase leads. This is just a few of them. What happens with lead generation is in the marketing and advertising world, we think this is it. If we have enough leads, we're going to close enough, we're going to make enough, and we're done. But the funnel is 5 parts, so we have to optimize every one of the 5 parts. And when we're optimizing leads, it's no different. We can get it through outbound calls. We can get it through a list purchase and emailing. We can get it through social media. We can get it through referrals. We can get it through direct mail. All these different ways that we can generate leads at the top of the funnel. And that top of the funnel comes down into our revenue. So for everybody that's on this call, just take a second and in your mind and on your notepad or even in the chat, pop in one thing that you're going to add leads from right now. One thing out of the list or not out of the list. Drop one thing that you just decided during my last couple seconds, you decided I'm going to add this and I'm going to get a few more leads this month. Perfect. Referrals, yes. Outbound calls, I love it. Referrals. Facebook and Instagram, yep. Social, yep. One of the things that I see work really well for coaches is very targeted LinkedIn. That means you find your optimal customer, you look at their website, you spend 2-3 minutes on it, you write them a personalized message knowing what their mission is, and they're saying, I would really love to connect with you. I love what you're doing. And then when they connect with you, you can write another message. And that new message will be, hey, I thank you so much for connecting. I really love what you're doing. I would love to have just a 5-minute conversation and see if I can really help you get your message out to the world or your product out to the world or something. Both messages highly personal. So if you're in the LinkedIn world, I've watched this. I did that process for Intel a couple of years ago for one of their divisions, and we trained up I think it was their cloud services division. And so they're using that process in LinkedIn today. So just know that LinkedIn is an absolute magical place to find and target and direct message your out of leads from the top of the funnel. Second, we want to increase the sales process, the effectiveness of our sales process. That means when we get a lead, we want to make sure that we're closing at a high percentage. And to do that, we need to know how long our sales processes are. If our sales process is a product on a e-commerce site, then it's typically, they would call it a two-step process. Even though now we're using remarketing, which is kind of adding a step to that process, that they would call it a two-step process, right? We get them contacts or get them engaged on a website, and then we walk them through a sales page. Well, now we're also doing remarketing, which is bringing them back to the page. So it's kind of blurring that line. Or it could be a four-step process that is more consultative, where we're finding out information about and growing the relationship before purchase. The typically two-step process is lower transactional value, singular. Four-step process is longer. All right, and I'll go in here and let's talk about conversion. Once we know what our process is, we can look at maximizing each phone call. And when I say maximizing each phone call, all we're doing is looking for what works and what doesn't. If you have multiple people on a team, or if you have somebody else that does a similar work than you, that's why we have masterminds, right? Jody may be really doing well at starting the conversation, and James may be doing really well at closing a conversation once it starts. That sharing for non-competing industries can turn your business around, because now you're down further in the funnel where each increment makes even more difference. So asking referrals, your close rates on follow-up, your amount of follow-up. One of the things that happens in sales is there's a study, it was done by one of the Salesforce plugins, I forgot the name of it, but I'll put it in chat later. And if you if it's an internet lead and you don't contact it within 5 minutes, you're like 800% less likely to qualify it and have a conversation. So one of the things I can tell you right out of the gate is anytime somebody inquires with you, immediately respond. It's very, very important. All right, increase the transactional value. This is also one of the J. Abraham's 10-10-10s. We want to find ways to add value to each client that's coming in and do it in a way that's still highly profitable for us and adds more value. So we can raise the price, we can reduce the discounts, we can add upsells, we can add product or service or bundles, we can give them access to a community. We're kind of part of a community here, Business Mastermind Cafe community, and that is part of that, right? It doesn't necessarily only mean that you're using them as a customer that they're paying, but communities are another piece of that. We are, in a sense, customers because we're serving the community and we're serving the business of Tony Robbins. So then the last is going to be to follow up more, add more value, and try to get more new customers out from old customers, right? So we'll find new products and services, and we'll add them, and we'll call them up, and we'll say, hey, you guys are doing great over here. What about adding this? So that would be the bottom of the sales funnel, and optimizing even more. Is that making sense to everybody? Rock and roll. Okay. So one of the things that was really important, and when we were talking first about this, specifically this force, is there's a whole day of business mastery basically on this. And for me, it was the most questions that I got. And all the questions, most of the questions that I got, besides the Donald Miller questions, were coming out of this story and the exercise that comes after it. So I wanted to make sure and cover this with Tony's graphics and covered it as thoroughly as we can in this short period of time. So let's take a look at what he did. So he went to one of his divisions that he found that he just knew wasn't performing at the level that he wanted it to perform. It was a coaching division. And everybody thought it was a great division, but he was looking at it like he is the ultimate coach on earth, and his coaching division isn't making all that much money. And so he had to go into a sales floor and find out what was going on. So again, we start with the 3 beliefs. Nothing happens if ourselves and our team, if we have one, doesn't feel all the way inside the 3 beliefs. And that means they've got to feel that it's possible for them to do their part. They've got to be committed to doing it, and they got to know that it's worth it for them. So again, the same kind of process. So we'll look at what they did during this process. I'm going to break them down, and then I'll show you on a full one-pager. But I think breaking them down will make it easier to digest. So the first thing they wanted to do is they wanted to increase the top of the funnel. Because you increase the top of the funnel and do nothing different, you're going to get 20% more business most of the time. So they decided the goal was to increase calls by 20%. And what they did to do that is they decided, you know what, we're not going to make anyone on this current sales team have to do anything in order to increase the calls. That's going to be a gimme. And so they decided they'll hire three more salespeople that are going to make 2,000 calls each, and that's going to be an additional 6,000 calls a month. Pretty simple, right? Just right out there, easy peasy. They hired 3 people. I'm sure in the background they hired 3 or 4 people and one left, but they were averaging 3 people to make sure that they could have enough extra calls to fuel the top of the funnel. And so out of that, they also wanted to create to raise the percentage of meaningful conversations that they had with their customers. So they found the person that had the best ratio for meaningful conversations. And they had a conversation with that person in a meeting like we're having right now, except on the sales floor instead of on video. They figured out what they were doing and they modeled it. And that person that had a massively higher conversion from initial call to meaningful conversation. And so that percentage was, I don't remember the exact one, it was like 30 or something percent higher than everyone else. And so they just he asked everybody, again, going through the process, the 3 steps, what do you think you can do? And consensus was, I think, was like 10 or 15% better. And he just said, what if we just did 3? And he got buy-in. He got, again, buy-in for every stage for you or for your team is going to be highly important. It's essential for this. And so they went 3% on that. Now we're now in the second part of the funnel, right? Then they wanted to go into getting an actual appointment set past that initial stage, right? Because they're in a 4-step sales process. And so the appointment, one of the things that they were doing is anyone who didn't fill out the disc profile, they weren't making an appointment from. So they just decided, we're going to set the appointment no matter what. If the disc profile is done or not, Tony, I think from stage says he wouldn't fill out the disc profile. So they decided to make that appointment, and it was another really easy one, right? Because all they had to do is set appointments whether they filled out the disc profile or not. So it wasn't that they had to do a bunch of extra work. Does that make sense? Give me a thumbs up. Still following? Awesome. So that was a 7% right there. And then they looked at the showing of appointments. And if you've been in this environment for a while, or in any sales environment, you know the story of the hotels. And hotels and restaurants for years now have almost universally adopted this process of just asking you to please tell them if you need to cancel your appointment. And so they just decided as a team, they were all going to ask, as they put at the very last part of the appointment set, is they were going to ask, hey James, great, I got you set up for that time, and could you promise me one thing? Promise me, pop it into chat, James. Yes or no? Can you promise me? One thing? Yes, okay. If you need to cancel, can you promise me that you'll call me and tell me? And then wait. The key to this part of the process is for this specific thing is to actually wait. Because if you just say, can you promise me to call me and cancel, and then they don't even wait for their answer, they've never promised. So by doing that, they were able to get an extra 10% appointments as a percentage of all those calls, right? So then the next goal in the funnel is to close more. So closing more clients, right? So simple, Tony's a modeler. He went through and he found his best salesperson as far as close rate, and he asked them what everybody should be closing, and walked through that process of why that person was closing more than everyone else, and got a commitment from the team, just like before, way lower than the top salesperson is going, but just an incremental improvement as a group that everybody believed that they could get to. And by doing that, they committed to just a 3% close, increase in close rate, right? And watch what happens though as we start to add these numbers up. So then they wanted to add some upsells. And what they found is the team wasn't universally doing upsells. So they just made a commitment that they're going to offer an upsell in every conversation. And they committed that they were going to get 5% more upsells out of that. And then they looked at increasing the purchase price. and they realized because the economic situations, that the optics, the team just didn't feel it. And so what he did is he said, well, you know what, if we can't really increase the purchase price, maybe we can just reduce the discounting. So we got a commitment to reduce the discounting by $500 annually, and they did that. And then he also make an extra offer, which kind of feeds back up into this revenue for upsells. And then at the other bookend of this, they added another unexpected value to anybody who signed up. And I want to say that was a UPW ticket, but if somebody knows, you can pop it into chat right now. And so they just added one more value for anybody who signed up for the coaching. It was a $1,000 value, and if you sign up, you get it. So that was just a freebie. And so here's what it looks like on the sheet, and this is part of what you see from stage. If you look, you're just going to see it's all the same data that I just showed you, but it was a little bit harder to read because it's all on one page. So outbound calls increased 20%, meaningful conversations, percentage increase in converting those leads to meaningful conversations, 3%, 7% on down the line. Now watch what happens when you do this. The impact becomes geometric. The impact, businesses run on free cash, operating cash. That's the guy right there, the O man on the side on 4-6. They run on free cash, and typically they're built in a way that sustains itself with a small bit of cream on the top, which is the margin, which is what the owner gets. But when you do these kind of funnel changes, everything just goes crazy. So they grew their division from 2.2 million to 5.2 million in 1 year. Okay? Now watch what this looks like though. It's not just $3 million different here, right? The cost economies changed everything. The margin went from 77.5% to 33%, which is 1,000% increase in profit. Who wants 1,000% more profit this year? Anybody? We get a little bit of thumbs up on 1,000% more profit? I'll take 1,000% more profit. The operating cash was $1.5 million higher. That is cash that you could spend if you wanted to, right? So over 5 years, if you want to look at a value, if you're looking to exit a business, the value of a business is dictated for most people by a thing called EBITDA, which kind of translates really loosely to how much leftover operating cash is there per year over a period and then a multiple. And so when they looked at the value of the business, it went up by $37 million. Who wants $37 million for some small little changes? That's what I'm talking about. I'll show you here in another screen. This is one of the screens that for Business Mastery, for me, I found I got the most confusion and questions on. And so I'm just going to quickly go through the parts of it that people give you the most questions on, at least for me, and everyone can butt in at this point for any part that they see that they're getting a lot of questions. Current statistics are on the left-hand side. The new targets are on the right. All this is the funnel from before with the percentages added in. If you look, you see 30,000 contacts per week, 7,500. They were looking for 20% addition. All that does is add 75, it goes to 9,000, changes your per day. That's an annual increase of 20%. Down here, meaningful conversation, 20% here. All they're doing is adding 3%, 23%. The math is much simpler than we give it credit for. 23%, right? Down here, we're going to appointment set. We're adding 7%, 45%, 52%. We're adding 10% on the shows by asking them to promise, just like that. 70 to 80, very simple. Go down here and we look at new clients closed. We're adding 3%, 19 to 22%. And then additional revenue from upsells, 5% to 10%. Pretty simple. And at the bottom, you see all the numbers. And all those numbers represent what's actually happening to the business and what's happening to your cash, what's happening to your monthly revenue, yearly revenue, and everything else from some simple steps. And this doesn't work if they would have just, if you would have taught this as a concept and didn't get commitment, this would be a concept on the page. But by getting the commitment from the team, it became real. It became operating cash that he actually was able to then either reinvest or spend. So that's the biggest piece of this whole process, is to get enough buy-in from your team, from yourself, if you're the team, or whoever it is that you're working with. It could be even vendors if you're talking about reducing costs with the Keith Cunningham stuff. But the entire business mastery and all of the 7 forces require you to believe, you to commit, and then for you to follow through and have it and know that it's worth it at the end. That's the biggest chunk of this. So I am done with this piece of it. So we can do one of two things right now. We can do open form sharing, or I can do a little extra time exercise where I kind of walk you through and ask you some questions about what you're going to do with lead generation and also what you're going to do with some of these other processes. So who has something, any kind of question on lead generation? I do a lot of it. So who's got something for me?
I might ask Mark, in terms of lead generation and your LinkedIn strategy.
Yeah.
You might just expand on that, because it seemed to be something that has been working very well from your body language.
It works fantastic. Let me just tell you what happened. I hired about 40 to 50 1099 salespeople over a period of a month and a half or so. Because I'm a mass marketer, and I'm like, okay, let's get them all on a phone. Let's get them on a dialer. Let's have them call people that are opening emails and interacting with emails around marketing, so we know they have some interest in marketing. And out of that time, most of them didn't stay long. They made, maybe a day's worth of calls or half a day's worth of calls or no calls. Out of that time, there were about 5 appointments that were quality appointments, and I don't think any of those turned into clients. When I adopted the LinkedIn strategy, I brought in one guy, he stayed, and he had 5 appointments in his first 10 days. And one of them will be a client next week. And it's easier, it's more impactful, it's easier, and what it does is it allows you to choose your clients in a way that, what's the best way to put this? You're feeding them personal information that truly is personal. So when you're doing a search for your clients, you're picking them one by one. So I don't know who is not on LinkedIn and who's on LinkedIn in this process.
LinkedIn.
Everybody's on LinkedIn, right? So people always ask me, they're like, oh, you got all these posts and you don't really have much interactivity on the posts. And I'm like, what do I care about that? I'm out interacting with people on my own and bringing in clients based on one-off conversations. And they're clients that, they pay me from, $11,000 to $50,000 each client. And so it's a different process, and it always will be, right? The kind of the happy dog jumping around getting a like is not the same as a CEO of an environmental service company saying, hey, yeah, let's have a conversation about marketing, or let's have a conversation about coaching. So by putting my intention and my energy to a place where people can actually bring me on and use my services, that changes the game. I can tell you, I did this process in August. I think it was September and October. And by doing this process, I went from negative $4,000 of operating cash. And then this last month was September. So in September, I was $25,000 with operating cash. And that was the redoing my sales funnel and redoing my Keys to the Vault stuff with Keith, resetting my product offering, and probably the most important is resetting my beliefs around everything and removing my business partner. Because who you fire is always going to be the most important piece of it. So from negative 2,000 to positive 25,000 in operating cash in 1 month.
Fantastic.
This process works if you make it a process instead of a concept. Concepts don't do diddly squat. But as soon as you adopt this and you make it a process and you start to look at each part of this and go, okay, well, how do I apply this for myself right now? So if we want, Pushpa, you had raised your hand, and I will hold you, unmute you. Hi, Pushpa, how are you?
Hi, Mark. Thank you so much for that. I got a lot out of that because sales funnels wasn't my biggest strength, neither is sales, but I'm going to give this a go now with the course. When you're looking for potentials in LinkedIn, what are you searching for? Like, are they businesses, government? What are you looking for? And also when you start that conversation, is it, hi, I've just seen your profile. It's really interesting and would love to hear more about what you're doing.
So here's what I look at. I'm looking, before I even start a search, I'm looking for what they call BANT. And that's an old school sales term. And what it means is, do they have a budget? Do they have authority? Do they have a need? And do I believe that their business or industry is in a time frame where they're going to spend money? So in order to do that, the industry is easy. I look for industries that are growing industries that are likely, in this environment, frankly, that are likely to get something out of government funding, or they're likely to be a beneficiary of current market trends. So you can do searches to find businesses and industries that are growing, and then titles that are likely to that are likely to be in charge of that. And then you just go to the sites and look at what's going on with them. If somebody's been in a business a long time and you can tell that they're in the right industry, and it takes each one of these, I'd probably take 2-3 minutes, and I train my people to take 2-3 minutes to look at it before I even make the connection request. If I've got somebody that is in the hemp industry, my message doesn't say, I like what you're doing. My message says, hey, hemp industry is booming and I love your angle in it. We would love to get you to more dispensaries. So I just wanted to connect with you. The end. So I'm tying the message specifically to what they do and who they are. Does that make sense? Not a can.
Definitely. And you've answered the second question as well, as like how long does your salespeople spend? So 2 to 3 minutes per client,
Yeah, and that's
per
the
potential.
first. At connection, it's a minute or 2 or 3 minutes. But after they connect, then I want them to know enough to make them likely to set an appointment.
Yeah.
And because we're gonna second message, we are going to second or third. We may say, thanks for connecting. It's great connecting with you. I'm going to do some research on your company and see if there's anything we can do to kind of work together. But we love the hemp industry, and we've been doing business in the hemp industry for years now, which is true. It's a fact. So make sure what you're saying is a fact. And then they go, they know that there's not any pressure then. But then the next message might be, hey, I love what you're doing with testing, and we can definitely help you get your testing machines into more labs. Let's have a conversation about this.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yes.
Very specific. And what's happening is email has gotten so kind of bulk and everything else that the specificity of it has gone through the ringer. And then with personalization, email, the specificity is almost a trick for people, and they know it's a trick. So you don't do anything that is, it's not real. Make it authentic. Because if the client can literally, if your service doesn't provide enough value to charge enough to actually choose your customers well, you might want to go back into the Keith Cunningham stuff and look at ways to add more value and create a service that you can spend enough time to actually prospect. Because if you can't prospect, you can't win this game at business. Does that make sense?
Mark, we want to just thank you for preparing the presentation, and to deliver a wonderful review of the 4-6, and particularly, optimization and maximization is such a key force. And we just want to honor and thank you for connecting us with the principles, connecting us with the beliefs, and particularly with those 5 stages that is covered primarily in day 4. For the next segment, we'd love to actually spend time for a little bit of time in breakout sessions just to brainstorm our learnings and our takeaways, and we will be coming back for more shares, because I see Stephen and Louise